Mhm.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to start in a few minutes. If you would, in the chat, please share who you are, who you're launching, and what their plans are after high school. If you're just joining us, please go to the chat and share who you're launching, who you are, and what their plans are after high school. We're going to start in just a few minutes. We're going to start in just a minute. If you would, tell us who you are, who you're launching, and what their plans are after high school in the chat. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, please, in the chat, share who you are, who you're launching, and what their plans are after high school. We are going to start in 30 seconds.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, we are going to get started. If you haven't had a chance, please go to the chat and tell us who you are and who you're launching and what their plans are after high school. So we're going to get started. If everybody could just keep themselves on mute, that's much appreciated. And I just wanted to welcome everybody. And we're so excited to have you all here together as one community. And we want to also welcome and say thank you to our partners for this evening, which are Temple Sinai, Temple Beth Tikva, the Temple, and Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta's Women's Philanthropy. My name is Amy Fox. I'm the Navigating Parenthood Coordinator at JumpSpark. And along with my wonderful husband, Chuck, we are launching 2 seniors in high school. JumpSpark is Atlanta's Jewish teen initiative. We drive innovative teen programming out of the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, and we're one of 10 communities in North America that comprise the Jewish Teen Funder Collaborative. We also are dedicated to helping parents of teens navigate their challenging roles by connecting them with resources, education, and community. We're grateful to the Funder Collaborative for their support of this program. Thank you so much for being here today, everybody. It's really amazing to see you all after this truly challenging year and to be together where we all belong and we're all going through the shared experience. I want to say a special thank you to our host committee members for all you did to help promote this event and to our partner organizations. So a few logistics before we get started. Again, please continue to keep yourself muted. You can put all your questions and comments in the chat box and we'll get to them during the Q&A portion of the program. If you have any tech questions throughout, don't hesitate to message Annie Fortnow in the chat box. And I also wanted to let you know that we're recording this call so we can share it with those who were unable to attend this evening. And also, we'd love to be able to see all your faces during the program. So if you feel comfortable, turn your camera on, but please do what feels good for you. I want to congratulate you all for getting to this moment. It's really starting to hit home as our kids are approaching their last of everything. Last baseball game, last soccer match, last performance, and soon their last day of high school. And amongst the celebrations are the bittersweet moments that we as their parents are experiencing, knowing that in a few short months, they'll be leaving home. And whether this is your first kid or your last, it doesn't make it any easier. However, this is also an exciting time for us as parents, a time to celebrate our achievements, to focus on ourselves and on our relationships, and enter a new and rewarding phase of our connection with our newly adult children. Project Launch was inspired by a conversation I had with veteran parent Bev Lewin, one of our panelists today. She gave me guidance and advice on what to expect from my children when they leave home. And it was so helpful, I knew I wanted to share it with my friends and my community. I'm thrilled to have our panelists, experienced parents and professionals, lead us in a conversation today about how we can help our teens and ourselves cherish this special time, but also allow ourselves to experience the emotions and challenges that it brings. This is the first event of a two-part series, so please put on your calendar Sunday, June 6th at 8 p.m. when we'll be talking about logistics and resources to help ease the transition of moving teens out of your house and into college life. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. As previously mentioned, Bev Lewin is the parent of 4 girls and is currently launching her youngest, Rebecca. She's an accomplished author and formerly worked at CNN. Presently, she's writing a book with her child psychologist dad called Stop Your Bullshit Thinking About Parenting. Get your kids to listen, cooperate, and do. Jen Wand is a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist who spent the past 25 years working with individuals, adolescents, couples, and groups. She has 5 children in their teens and 20s who span more than a decade. She's been an amazing resource to me over the years, and I'm so grateful to her for being here today. Sue Borson is the publisher and editor-in-chief of Your Teen magazine for parents of teenagers. She successfully launched 5 children into adulthood. When her oldest hit adolescence, she was in search of support. Your Teen magazine was born out of that need. Since then, she's become a leading expert on teens and supporting their parents. Sue and I were introduced through the Wexner Network, and I'm so grateful to her for her support of me personally and professionally. She'll be our moderator today. And with that, I hand it over to Sue.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jewish Atlanta. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and so excited to be here with you tonight. And I saw someone has a kid at Ohio State. Put that in the chat. I too have a kid at Ohio State, my baby. And so I'm excited to start this conversation tonight, which to me resembles how we all felt when we came home from the hospital with our babies and we read the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And when we hit adolescence with our kids, there aren't all those resources that we got handed to all over the place when we were pregnant and had our first baby. And yet it's kind of a mystery what's going to happen when that kid leaves, how we're going to feel, how they're going to feel, and how the family dynamic is going to change. So for the first half hour, we're going to have a discussion. And then the next half hour, we're going to take your questions. So you don't have to wait till the end. Put your questions in the chat. And we will be hitting them later. So don't worry about it not being answered right away. And you might get it answered along the way anyway. We are going to open with a poll just to see how everybody's feeling right now. The question is, how are you feeling about launching your teenager? The polls, we're gonna have 3 polls tonight. They're all anonymous. So you, on this one that is going to come up any minute, there we go. Okay, you're gonna click all that apply. So how are you feeling about launching your teenager? Excited for the changing family dynamic, bittersweet to say goodbye, overwhelmed with a sense of loss, worried your teenager isn't prepared, under pressure to impart life lessons. I'll just let you know that when my first child was leaving home, I followed her all summer long to give her all the life lessons that I hadn't yet accomplished to date. And she was oh so grateful for those experiences. She'll share that with you anytime. Okay, so take 20 seconds, get your answers in. I don't think I can tell here when the answers are coming through. Annie, can you see that on your end?
I can. We still need like 20 answers from people.
Okay, so we're going to wait another few minutes, not minutes, seconds. Get them in. All right, here are the results. 50% are excited for the changing family dynamic. 76% are bittersweet to say goodbye. 21% are overwhelmed with the sense of loss. That was me also. 33% worried your teenager isn't prepared. And 34% under pressure to impart life lessons. Okay, so now we are going to go to the experts and ask the question. Everyone right now is preparing for separation. So how is it? Let's start with the parents. How, Jen, you tell us, how is this impacting parents at this moment? And of course, we know there's many ways it's impacting parents, but you've seen a lot of this. So tell us what you've seen.
Well, I've seen it and I felt it myself. So I was looking at the poll and I just, I don't have one launching this year, although he's supposed to be. He's going to be launching next year. But I was looking for the last answer, which is all of the above. So, and I'm just saying that because I looked at all the choices of how you might be feeling. And I think there's a part of all of us that feels all of those things that were on the poll possibly. It's, one day we feel one way, one day we feel another way. It's bittersweet, sense of loss, it's excitement. So I think I would just start by saying, we're all parenting in unprecedented times. It's really clear that even now, what we've all kind of experienced in the last year and a half relative to times before is more challenging and more overwhelming than ever. For different reasons. So it's a relative term, being prepared, were we all prepared for what's happened the last year and a half, 18 months, 2 years? Absolutely not. And what does prepared even feel like and look like? And I think many of us hold ourselves to a standard and our children to a standard of what it feels like and means to be prepared. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Holding space for 2 processes, your own process and your child's process, and how to parallel, walk next to them, by them, work on being connected, feeling connected to them, at the same time having them separate and push you away, and us also dealing with our own separation. So it's a very overwhelming time. And I think I would just start by saying that honoring those 2 parallel processes and also acceptance of what is, even those things that feel really uncomfortable and those things that feel really wonderful and exciting. So we'll get into more of that as we talk, but I really think, being ready is something we're all searching for. And it's not necessarily a feeling that we ever really do feel. And we can all look back at, when they're born, when we hit teenagehood, when they're toddlers. Are we ever prepared and ready until we're actually in it? So all of you who are in it, and May is probably the most hectic time when all of these things are culminating, especially after the year we've all had. So, here we are having the supportive meeting, and your mind's probably thinking of all the things your child needs to do and you need to do and that you feel and they feel. So hopefully tonight we can give you a sense of belonging and support that no matter what you're going through, it's okay.
Bev, you've launched a few. Can you put yourself back to the first one leaving and remember how you felt during that experience, especially, the last few months?
Yeah. Oh boy, can I. I mean, it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. And I just kept getting hit with these waves of pain. I mean, yes, there were things to celebrate, graduation and, all these milestones, but I probably sometime the summer beforehand, I had to label it as something for myself. And I finally called it felt like childbirth to me. Why? Because the pain kept coming in waves. It was happening to me. I was not in control. But in the end, I knew it would be good. It was going to produce something good. And so for me, that was the perfect analogy. And I'd say now it's our fourth and final child. We only have girls, so it's our fourth and final daughter. And it is so much easier on me this time because I understand much more the dynamics that are going on, both inside of me and inside of her. For example, we had her very last dance competition just this weekend, and that's been a major part of her time and our life together. And at the very end, I did cry. It's very normal for me. But I also knew to immediately back it up with something positive. And so I just sat there in the audience with the tears starting, and I closed my eyes and I just said to myself, thank you, God, for the privilege to see this and for the privilege of having these years with her. And that really helped, really helped me turn it into a positive. And I even on the way home from it, we were at a stoplight and I took her hand and I said, let's say Shechianu together because, we're marking this. This is the launch of you, out of this phase and into another. So I know it'll be bittersweet when she leaves. My girls have all done gap years in Israel before they go to college. So that's extra tough because they are so far away. But I know it'll be good.
Okay, I'm going to add that to what both of you said, which is that each of us experiences all those emotions, which was why we said pick as many as you want. So I experienced all of them, but not all the time with each kid. So my first two, it was a tragedy for me and an embarrassing tragedy because I knew, thank God, I wasn't living with a tragedy, but I had that feeling of loss that was so profound. And then my next two, when I took them to college, the first two also went to Israel, so that was bigger. The next two went straight to college. And the third one said to me, oh, Mom, don't cry. And I realized, oh, shit, she thinks I'm supposed to cry. And I don't feel so sad because I understand what's going on. And it was a little problematic. I had to really emote for her because she was expecting that. But my last one, which Bev just described for her, was not at all the experience I had. My husband and I wept like babies and had to really tell our son this was not about him. You go off, you do you, we are nuts. Anyway, so my point in sharing that is to say that whatever you're feeling right now, you see a good friend of yours not having the same reaction. We're all over the place. So just know, expect all of that. And now we're going to look toward our kids. Let's look at how we think our kids are doing. So this is poll 2. How is your teenager feeling right now? Again, check everything that applies to you. So we don't have all of the above because you can click all of them. And again, this is anonymous. So we have anxious, excited, relieved, optimistic, nervous, unmotivated. We also call it senioritis, unprepared, and under pressure. So the results are 54% said their kids are anxious. Wow, this is so nice. 92%, the winner. Your kids are excited. 36% relieved, 68% optimistic, 59% nervous, 34% unmotivated with senioritis. That might have something to do with COVID in this unusual year. 7% unprepared, also excellent. And 32% under pressure. That's not great, but it's been a rough year. Okay, so now we're going to ask the question, we heard how all of you are looking at your kids and analyzing how they are behaving right now. What's age appropriate? What's developmentally appropriate at this moment for our kids that we can anticipate? And it could even give us a little comfort to know that what we're seeing is pretty normal. Jen, you want to start with that?
Sure. I would say the first image that comes to mind is roller coaster. I think that no matter how stable your child has been or hasn't been, there's no doubt that there's a lot of volatile emotions. And so one of the things that you can be prepared for is that you might be seeing something in your child that you haven't seen ever. You might be seeing mood swings, you might be seeing reactions, you might be seeing overly attached behavior that previously you didn't see. Whatever it is, if it's different, I think that we would expect that. And in some ways, you might see things intensify, that had kind of mellowed out and calmed down, and all of a sudden now you see them kind of exacerbated. So, I mean, the way that I think about it is what you can expect is we have a way as adults of being able to categorize things in terms of emotional, how we feel, logistical, what needs to get done, and behavioral, how we actually act. And if you think about our kids, they're not able to discern right now, many of them. Some of them are beautifully able to do it, and some of them are not, and some of them are in between. But just what it means to feel something, what it means to act on those feelings or not, and then what it means to be able to plan and be prepared for logistics and all the things that are happening. And those three categories can really overwhelm us. And I think if you think about it, we're going through that too. So the way that if I had to say one thing that you can do for yourself that I think will also translate to understanding your kid or being able to provide a space of some kind of healthy interaction is to really regulate and honor your own emotions, whatever they are. And the more that we can do that as adults, because we're all over the place too, many of us, some of the times. So how do we regulate and honor and have enough compassion for ourselves and whatever it is we're experiencing, and pausing, not reacting to their emotions that they might be going through, and being able to separate the two so that sometimes there's a space, that space of slight separation or distance that actually just means you're allowing and holding space for their process and yours at the same time. And there's ways, more specific ways to do that, but in general, that's how I see it.
Oh, well, give us one or two of the particulars.
So, for example, how many times do you pick up your phone and you see that once again, your kid is texting you with a panicked kind of social dilemma or something that they haven't gotten done that they realize needs to get done, or you're reminding them or making sure that you're there for them to be the reminder that something needs to happen at a certain time or date so that this can happen and this can get done. And if you notice, one thing I would say is whether it's the phone or whether it's just engaging with your child, notice how you feel in your body, how activated we can be sometimes when we're going to be there for our kid. And I would say that a tool we would use, or you could use, is all these years we prepare to be able to kind of step in and meet them and, help them and guide them and, remind them and be there for them. And then here we are in this space where actually what we not need to do, what's most beneficial is detaching a little, is being there emotionally and staying connected to them and really attuning with whatever it is they're going through and feeling, but not always feeling like we have to do what we've done before, which is to rescue, to fix, to advise, to lecture, but just to hold a space of love and attunement for whatever it is that they're going through, listening, hearing, without necessarily responding with anything but love. And that's a hard thing to do because we have to do that with ourselves first before we're really prepared to deal with them. So that's why I'm saying the more we regulate and sit with ourselves and our uncomfortable emotions and soothe ourselves, we'll have more space and time to do that with our kids.
Bev, do you remember that that stretch of time where you're kind of pulling back and saying like, I probably have to let them do some of the things that were comfortable for you and satisfying, right?
Yeah.
Like we love that as a mom, as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say I have 4 very different girls, but around this time of year in their senior year, they all had one thing very much in common. And that is that to me, they seemed like birds who had outgrown their cages, and it just like, it almost seemed unfair to keep trying to, well, you got to sort of stay in it, at least for now, until you can actually leave. I mean, I loved seeing the pull that so few of your kids have senioritis. I mean, that was a universal thing for my kids. They really struggled during this last, run at school to stay motivated. And I think another thing that I see that I'm seeing now, and I've really seen with all of them, is that there's a chafing at family rules, and anything, as you're saying, Sue, anything that limited their independence, it was much harder for them to deal with that. And of course, just the general fussy, snarky, ultra sensitive, and sometimes anxious. I mean, I generally think that our kids help us to get ready for the pending separation, because they can really be a pain to be with, and this is what I interpret as being among those labor pains that I was saying. It's like childbirth, and some of the pain is from within me, and some of the pain is coming from my child who just is out of here mentally.
Well, Bev, I always think of how at the end of your pregnancy, you feel so awful that you cannot wait. You're about to get pain, but you don't care. Get that baby out. And a little bit of like this summer before they leave is doing that. It's making it so you kind of are almost a little bit happy to shove them out. But I would say that wasn't true for all my kids. So for everything that we're saying out there, I'm sure someone listening is thinking to themselves, there's something wrong with me or my kid because they're not doing that. The range of what we will experience. And if you have multiple kids, you'll experience it differently each time. But so Jen, I want to just go back to this idea of individuating. So we know that's their job right now. We know they're leaving us, but we also in that moment might not realize that involves rejection. And so that is so painful after all the love we have given them, for them to turn around and reject us. Like, how dare you, right? So what's that about?
Well, I would encourage each one of you to think about rejection in terms of natural separation. So kids, even us as adults, think about how we all have our own separation issues sometimes as we age, to separate not only from our children, but to separate from people we love. And we've learned through the years different coping mechanisms and different skills. But really, our children they know how to act in a way that might feel like rejection, but they don't necessarily know how to navigate separation in a way that feels comfortable. And so we're there. I look at it like we're there to help model that for them. We're there to show them that in the midst of distance and separation in close relationships, that's where the staying connected, like not disconnecting, but detaching. And detaching means staying out of their way, allowing them to learn some of the things that they need to learn on their own, and starting to prepare them for what it's going to mean to be far away and have to face some of these situations and things. So I would say that, in terms of rejection, looking at it more as creating healthy distance. And sometimes it doesn't feel healthy. Sometimes it feels flat out mean. It feels cruel. It's like what Bev was talking about. It's like, who is this child that I've raised, that I've been so close to? And then other times you're going to see the opposite. Some kids who have been more distant during adolescence, who have been more independent, more rebellious, all of a sudden it's time to move to the next stage or transition. And all of a sudden they're clingy. They want to be in your room. They want to be with you. They feel needy. You're ready to separate and you're not sure how to handle it. So, I mean, like we said, it's very individual. And especially after these times in the last year and a half, I mean, how many of us experienced our child differently than we ever have in the midst of this kind of time period of what we've all been adjusting to. We've seen different things in ourselves, and we've seen different things in them. So looking at rejection as more of a, growing pain, looking at it from a growth mindset of, okay, if we feel rejected, if we see them acting in a way like that, how do we coach them, but not control them, make them feel guilty, all these things that we as parents do anyways, because we're imperfect, but how to just work with that.
Okay, Bev, before I get to you, I'm just going to read this comment from Lori because it's so funny. My husband calls, this is from Lori, my husband calls what Bev is saying shitting the nest. The birds are outgrowing the nest and mama bird and papa are ready to push them out. That is great. I'm going to use that. That's awesome. Okay, Bev, add your own experiences because I'm sure you've had them.
So one of the things when my kids are in this too big for their cage mode, I find that like having a good story in my head to help me interpret what's going on with them, it's so helpful for me to keep me calm. And I once heard someone speak years ago who said that adolescence for kids is almost like traveling. When we're going on a trip, we're excited about the trip. It's going to be great. But that travel day, when you're finishing your packing, trying to get everybody out the door in on time, waiting in lines at the airport, that part is not so much fun, and a lot of us who are normally not fussy, we do get fussy on those travel days. I mean, I need to get to the airport early. My husband, the optimist, wants to get there at the last minute. And we've had some of our bigger fights, on those travel days. And to me, that analogy really helps. I think of my kids during this time, they are traveling. They're traveling from being in high school, feeling secure in where they are, and they're having this humongous transition. And so when I look at it that way, it helps me not to take whatever they're throwing at me as personally, although, sometimes even that's tough. And I just tell myself, this is normal, whatever they're doing. It's really about where they are. And it isn't really about me and how they feel about me. Now, if they're rude to me, I sometimes will, say, okay, let's stop and rewind and redo that one, and have them apologize and say it more nicely. But sometimes I'll just tell myself, look, I'll let the rudeness go. And then if I can, I'll circle back later and try to talk to them at a calmer time and say, hey, next time, please say that differently or do that differently. But I'd say the benefit of having gone through this now, this is my fourth time, is that my husband and I we can laugh about it. We can just giggle. I mean, and look at each other after, our child has said something, and we could just roll our eyes at each other and then tell ourselves, you know what? This is very 18, just like we told ourselves this is very 2 when they were, toddlers and they had their temper tantrums. So again, that sort of knowing that it's developmentally exactly what they should be doing, it's a huge help for me.
So you both sound aspirational to me. I think that it's such great advice. I also think there's a tone underneath it that you already have really healthy relationships with your kids. So for some of us, that's not the case at this moment. And it's fraught to feel like this is a moment where you want to treasure the time and you want a memory created right now. And yet you don't have a partner in this story that you had in your head. So Jen, what can we do in advance to kind of know that this is not the whole story? This is not the end in any way.
Yeah, you were reading my mind. As Bev was talking, I was talking about I was thinking travel, and I was thinking the journey of travel and time. And I was thinking this concept, like how I remember, because all of my, so far, 3, almost 4 kids that have launched, and I still have one more, have all launched differently. They've all had different paths. And in each of their journeys, one thing that has been constant is the feeling as they're preparing to travel or launch that time is of the essence. That, we're reflecting back on time and thinking about all the things we did or would have done or could have done differently. And then we're internalizing and personalizing that. But just this idea that timing, part of us wants to rush it. And, I find myself sometimes just counting down the months, like, oh my gosh, how many more months? And then there's moments when I'm like, I can't even imagine, what it's going to be like to be not in their presence. And even what I think is to remember we don't have to squeeze all of our connection time and all of our parenting into this time preparing. That your relationship with your child, even if now it feels unhealthy, even if now it feels toxic, or if it feels like, it's better than ever, or it's in between, there's moments of both, that you have, God willing, and there's no way to predict for any of us what's going to happen in 30 minutes versus years from now, but in a framework of this is an unfolding process, building a relationship with your child. You get 18 or plus or minus a couple of years with them at home, but you do have this time period to keep developing and keep building relationship with them. And it doesn't, time is not of the essence sometimes as we see and feel it right here and now, that we do have an unfolding process to be excited about and to also be nervous about.
Have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had different levels of relationship with my girls as they were, at this age of 18, and some of them, it was easier to be close with them at that time of their life than with others, and sometimes that would be worrisome. I think that's very natural for all of us. But years ago, one of the most helpful things that was ever told to me while I've been parenting, one of my kids was going through a bit of a hard time. And this very wise person told me, look at this story and now write the end of this story, like in your mind, but make it a wonderful ending. And then believe it'll happen and live into that. And that has been some of the best advice I've ever received. So, for my girls that maybe it was extra rocky during this time, just because our relationship was not as great as I wished it could have been at that moment, or they were going through a harder time, if I can just stop my worry and just sit there and write that end of the story, that she's going to be great, that we are going to be okay in the end, that we're going to be closer after she leaves home. That has helped me so much. And I have definitely found that the dynamics shift for us. They shifted in a very good way once each child left home. The dynamics shifted well for the most part with the child that left. The dynamic shifted well with the children who remained. I mean, that was a huge worry of mine. Like, how are we going to live without this child? How I could not envision, that they're going to leave, that you're not going to have all of your kids around for the whole time. But like, part of me didn't know, like I just was thick. And so that's what I think made that part so difficult. But the amazing thing is that in the end, like there were lovely shifts that happened with those of us who were left behind. I mean, the younger kids got to be leaders. I had more time for them. So I think reminding ourselves that it's going to be okay in the end is really important. And then, as both of you were saying, it doesn't have to be a linear path. I mean, we had 2 of our girls transfer colleges. They got to the place they thought they wanted to go to. And pretty soon in that first year, they realized, you know what, this is not the best fit for me. So they transferred. And we even had one child who decided to take a break from college altogether. She called us and said, you know what, I really can't figure out what I want to major in. I think the best thing is for me to just take a break from college, and I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to work in a temp agency, and I'll try out different business environments that way. That's what she wanted to do. Well, I mean, my husband and I, we almost died. We were not pleased with that one bit. But, again, write that story, the end of the story. It's going to be fine in the end. It's going to be good in the end. And in the end, it was. And she did figure it out, and she did go back to school, and she's thriving and happy. So, just remind yourself, it doesn't have to be linear, not this portion of it, and not
Mhm.
what's about to come. And it's going to be okay.
Okay, that is such good advice. Anyway, I think there's nothing linear anymore in our lives. I think that's all changed anyway. So how important is it for us to find other people, like kind of the play group we had when our kids were little, to find people who are going through the same experience, and kind of have a support group with each other as you kind of find these hurdles that you weren't prepared for? Do you think that's a necessary to get through this, or a recommendation?
Do you want me to speak to that first? Or
Yeah.
Bev, want to answer first? Why don't you answer that first, and then I have some thoughts, but
Yeah. So I would say, I think it can be very helpful, but you got to remind everybody to be real, like the part that we put of our lives on Facebook or what have you is ultra sanitized. Sometimes you'll ask someone who just launched someone, oh, how's he doing? And oh, he's great, he loves it, So I think just make sure that you have at least a few people in your life who you can look at and say, okay, give me the good, the bad, and the ugly, because for most kids, there are bumps. And I think that that's the only thing that I would say is you want to be able to share the bumps, you want it to feel safe, and you want to be able to be there for others with it. But I think that's one of the wonderful things that JumpSpark is doing. I'm so glad that they're holding this. And hopefully all of you out there will look around at the participants here and realize that you do have a community, and I also think it's good to reach out to veteran parents who might not have a child exactly your child's age, but who have a longer lens and can help you as well. I think it's super helpful.
So one of the things that I agree, I think it can be, I don't want to say double-edged sword, bittersweet. I think one of the things that you have to be really mindful of with yourself is you individually and what it is that you need in this process at different points in time. I remember when I launched my first, I describe it as I felt every night I woke up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning with tears rolling down my face. And I had no idea I was even crying. Like, it was so real. It was so powerful, but it was even more powerful when I wasn't even conscious of it. And so you feel like your heart's, we always say when you have a child, when you have children, you feel like you take your heart and it's walking around outside your body. And that was my experience the first time. And one of the things I remember was it was actually more helpful for me to kind of share with a few chosen people, but that I really needed to find that calm, my inner calm in that storm. And so just know yourself well enough to know when it's the right time. And it's not going to always feel right. Sometimes you'll try things and something will happen and be like, oh, it's time to kind of like go within again. But really choose carefully. Having a forum like this is awesome because it's big enough that it's, you have this support. But in terms of intimate interactions and going to people, choose carefully. And remember, when our kids go off and launch, they're struggling with the social media and all the stuff of, oh, this one's having the greatest time. And oh, I want to compare to this one. And why am I not feeling like they are? Just watch yourself and really be careful about, guiding yourself away from that zone so that you can really be in your own experience and choose the people that support you carefully.
Okay, I'm going to do one more poll, but before I do that, if you have questions that you don't feel comfortable putting into the chat, you can click on everyone and just send it directly to Amy. No one else will see it. But we're going to do two more things and then move into the Q&A. So right now we're going to show poll number 3. When you think about your student leaving home, what worries you? And again, click all that apply. And again, it's anonymous. Separating before they even leave, getting up for classes, making friends in college, feeling academically prepared, finding emotional and social support, losing the family connection, and sharing too little about post-high school life. And the answers are: separating before they even leave is 21%, getting up for classes, 28%, making friends in college, 30%, feeling academically prepared, 33%. The big one is finding emotional and social support, 68%, losing the family connection, 30%, and sharing too little about post-high school life, 40%. So now I'm going to ask Jen and Bev, what surprises you there? Then the
Can
answer
you-
to the, you want to put the answers back?
Can you put them back for a second?
And then while you're thinking about it, think about what parents should let go of, what they're worried about that they shouldn't worry about. Bev, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'd say, I think everybody is so different that I'm not that surprised by the poll results just because I think everybody's got their own worries, based on their own child, and finding emotional and social support, especially now, right at the end of COVID, when life has been so bizarre for our kids. And I think a lot more kids are having anxiety and struggling as they, some of them are just now in the last few weeks going back to school in person. So I really understand that, concern over finding emotional and social support. I think that just makes us more comfortable as parents to know that someone's going to have their back, someone that they can reach out to at college, be it a friend or a professional on campus, et cetera. So, and then what was the second part, Sue, about worry?
Well, let me just read what Meredith said. We should not worry. I said, oh, what should we not worry about? So she says, we should not worry about losing our connection. They were with us for so long and we have laid strong foundation, or else we would not be on this call. So I think that's really insightful. Jen,
Yeah.
Jennifer, anything else that we should not worry about? I'll throw out getting up for classes.
Yeah. I was gonna say, wow, I'm surprised that's so low, but that's because all of mine had such bad senioritis that it was like Bev. I think one of the things that sometimes we don't give our kids enough credit for what they can handle. Many of them have been so used to us being right there next to them with all the bumps and bruises and falls. And that they take a lot more when they leave us or when they launch from us than we realize. And they don't even realize it until they're a couple months in, 6 months in, a year in. I can think of a million examples where each one of mine, it takes that first semester, it takes that first few months, and then all of a sudden you start to feel a little bit of a shift. So really step back and try to just allow space to give your kids more credit and they have more resilience than we realize sometimes.
That's a great point. Okay, last question for people to put into the chat. Share one thing that you are excited about after your teenager leaves home. So you may not have thought about this yet, but there's got to be something that you can't wait that you couldn't do before. So just put that into the chat. Food bills go down. Excellent. Spending time alone with my other daughter, getting closer with the other two. Less laundry. Our hot water bill will plummet. I guess you have a shower. Redecorating. My house will be cleaner and quieter. These are awesome. Oh, I'm not there yet. Yeah, I feel you. Once they're both gone, maybe dating. Oh, that's a good thing. Empty nesting, traveling with my husband on our own. Can't wait for them to figure out how much I do for them. Don't hold your breath. Less clomping of feet at 1 a.m. waking me up. Oh, that is the worst. Only needing a table for 4 at a restaurant. Those are easier to get, Shauna. Okay, so we are
one thing
sure, Jen.
I think we have neglected to mention is there are some people, and I don't know how many, who are, it's like all at once launch, whether you have an only child and they're the only one leaving and the first and the last, or you have a set of twins like Amy, who, you're double launching. I mean, that's a very, very different experience. And I don't think we should just we can't address the details of it now and some of the special needs that you might have, but it is really a very different experience to be like launching one time. And the intensity of emotions, I will say that I think it's just natural that those of you who are experiencing that are experiencing some of these things even more so. So I just want to acknowledge that.
All right. Well, your answers were excellent. I hope it made you think for a moment that there's good to come. And if we can switch over to the Q&A, let's see. Oh, here they are. Okay. So how do you control your own worries without making your kid anxious? That is such a good one.
I would say that my story, that right the end of that story, that it's going to be good in the end. And that, I think, really helps me control my worries, And the other thing is just to remind myself that, worry's good if it prompts you to do something constructive, like, I think we need a math tutor, or I'm noticing that you're feeling anxious. Why don't we, call that, that daughter of a friend of ours that is at the same school you're going to, to just, find out some more about what you don't know. But beyond that, it's just not helpful. So I just try to tell myself, if I get lost in worry, remember that good end of the story, and it calms me. It really helps a lot.
And I would say that is very, very true. And then I'll go on the other end, and just because I think Bev addressed that piece of what it feels like to, when you are worrying, being constructive, doing something with that energy, pivoting away from the worry into something that you feel like might be helpful for you or your child. And and it is also very powerful and very important. And I have learned this with especially my one or two that were the most challenging during this process. And one that I'm working through some of this is attunement is so powerful. And when I say attunement, I mean, when you are anxious and worried, if you can find space to separate with space, with words, with a little bit from your child that's launching, so that you can go and kind of do your own kind of regulation, you will find that once you do that and you come to your child and they have their worries, there is so much more response and less reaction. There is so much more connection that sometimes is felt when you have cleared yours. And it doesn't mean to push them away and not have them all you want, but take care of them and then come to your child, so that then you can hold space for them to bring it to you and not have to fix, not have to solve problems, not have to be the solution gatherer, and just to be there with them and their feelings, and allow them to see that you can trust that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, even to these strong feelings and emotions and worries.
And I just want to add, if it's really overwhelming and you can't manage it, get some help. Reach out to someone else for some help. And I've done it many times in raising my kids, where I was too enmeshed in their emotions and not helping them. And it sometimes takes an outside perspective to help there. Okay, how should I communicate with my kid when they go to college? Do I let them take the lead?
Jen, you want to take that one?
I think it's very individual. I think when you know your child and their style of communicating and their way that they tend to handle, reaching out to you or not, what that means when they're quiet, what that means when they're overly communicative. So it's really like tapping into what their patterns have been. And also, I think there's a way to communicate where I don't believe you have to let them take the lead, play this, like, not cat and mouse, but who's going to call who first, and it's not like that. It's just, it's always okay to let your child know that you love them. There's always appropriate, and not an over smothering way, to let your child know, I am thinking of you. I hope you have a wonderful day. I know you have a test day, and I love you very much. And having I think the biggest thing is not about who communicates first or second, but expectations. And if you can work on releasing expectations, is just really letting them know. Your child will always appreciate and know, as long as we don't smother it and expect, numerous texts and phone calls a day, that they're loved and that you're excited for them on their journey and you're thinking of them.
Okay, I'm going to move into alternating because we have a bunch more questions to get done quickly. So Bev, this one's for you. Oh, this is so not for you. What are the differences between launching boys and girls?
No clue.
I think Jen will have to take that one.
A big difference, I think, without being gender specific. I have 4 boys. I have 1 girl. My first was a girl, and so that clearly, I think, was the hardest for sure. I think that it's really more about, people know me on this call, know me well enough. It's more about energy. I think really it's not about gender. There are many, many boys, probably less, that have the energy that want to be connected, want to communicate, but they are there. I have 1 or 2 of them. So it really isn't gender specific. I think if we try to categorize that, we're probably not going to serve us as parents and our kids well. And I will say in general, it really is very relational. Depends on your relationship with your child.
I think the thought is that the boys communicate less than the girls when they get to college, but having 2 boys and 3 girls, they all communicated very much in the beginning until they settled in. And there was a moment where I knew they were okay when they stopped calling all the time. So I have a lab of 2 and 3, and I did not see a big difference. Okay, Bev, how about dads and moms? Did you guys have a difference in your reaction?
Yeah. I mean, well, but then we're so different, he is the eternal optimist and I'm the worrier, so I don't know that had to do with our gender, that he was a father and I was a mother, but, I was, a puddle when my first left, and he was very optimistic, and that was great for me. Get an optimist in your life if you don't have one. Get someone to tell you, oh, it's going to be great. You just need to hear that.
Can you tell us where to buy that?
Where to buy that, right? I think you can go on Facebook Marketplace.
Okay, for siblings launching to the same school, how do you help them create different experiences and paths?
I have an answer to that pretty quickly.
Go for it.
Don't. It's not your responsibility to create different paths and experiences. It's theirs.
I had 2 kids that started college at the same time at the same school. And they had entirely different experiences, and there was nothing to worry about. I mean, they were different kids with different needs, and it just worked out really well. Although they went to University of Michigan, which is a very big school, and they bumped into each other every single day inadvertently. It was the oddest thing.
If you're talking twins, are you talking twins for the most part? Is this what, I mean,
mine were not, but I don't know if this one was this. Yeah. I think there's another person on the call besides Amy who has twins also. Or 2 kids going to the same place. Let's see Amy, whose question was that? You?
Irish twins. Not twins.
Okay.
So I would say that, I mean, I didn't mean to make that like a flippant answer, but I think it's really being there for each of your kids, because clearly, whether they're twins or not, or Irish twins or just siblings, they're very different human beings. And so really being able to hold space for them to have different experiences and supporting it, and trying really hard, just like we do when we're raising our kids, to try and catch ourselves in that comparison game and try and release it when it's happening, own it when it happens, because we're going to do it, and say, oh, I just realized I did this. Let me really honor that you're having a different experience, and I want you to, and I'm happy about that for you. Okay,
I think that these comments are really helpful, and go to the last question I was going to ask you. When my son left for college, I had to accept that text messages were enough. That's Erin. And Jennifer says, I didn't want to call my college junior when she was a freshman because I didn't want to bother her. That's crazy. I'm her mom, and I can call to say I love you whenever I want. It was hard because we didn't have a phone relationship, and we had to learn how to talk on the phone. It's a change, but it's great to hear her talk as an adult. Then Betsy says, every once in a while, I text my college son for POL, proof of life. it makes for some funny pictures. Anyway, I think that those point to the last question, which is, can you set something up in advance with your kid? Like, is it a good conversation to say, like, every Friday call home, every Sunday call home, or is it just kind of, you got to wait and see?
Well, I can say that I've tried and I failed. So you know, I'm like, oh, it'd be so great. Colin wishes a Shabbat Shalom before, but you know, it doesn't always work in their life. And so one of the things that's really been nice for us is not only do we have text, but we have a family WhatsApp group. And I really like being able to put little things like little videos of the dogs, you know, things that I know will pull on their heartstrings, but won't be naggy, you know, but just bring them back into connection. And I titled the WhatsApp group Lewin Loves, with the hope that they'd feel love through it, you know, and we just, and they'll put stuff up there on occasion too, but it's mostly me doing it. And I know they're looking at it. And so that's, you know, Zeitgesund, that's got to be enough sometimes.
Jen, anything to add?
I would say that the lower expectations, the better. I would say any prescribed form of, when I've tried, it hasn't worked. And really, to give you an example, I have one who went on a gap year to Israel. You know, he was around plenty. They were in quarantine for many months. And I'm telling you, when I say I talked to the kid 3 times between September and January 1st, we texted, we had the family love chat. That was really helpful, sending cute pictures, but anything cute, anything love connection oriented, but anything informational or wanting to communicate a certain thing, total and complete didn't work. All of a sudden, 6 months passed, and now as he's about approaching home, he's calling, he's sharing, because he got his time, he got his space, he feels the natural separation, and he feels free and safe to say, hey, maybe actually I really do want to talk to my parent now. Texting is fine, but in terms of talking, so it's very individual, but low expectation, lots of love, unconditional acceptance of where they're at. That's not accepting disrespect or, you know, anything that's, you know, there's a line, but in general, kind of accepting where they're at with it and trying not to be too hurt or take things too personally.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that I can't think of a better way to end this with setting the bar low.
Very.
And you both pointed that out really nicely. And I'm going to say thank you so much for being here with me and letting me participate. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who is going to talk about the next part of this.
Yes. Thank you, Sue, so much. And Jen and Bev. That was awesome. And I absolutely loved like seeing everyone commenting in the chat and, you know, talking about what works for them and, you know, the whole sending pics of dogs. Like, I just thought that was so clever. And I think we want to continue this conversation and we want to do it in small groups. So would love for you to stay on the call, and Amy's going to put everybody into a small group breakout. And it's going to be an opportunity to really like get to know new people and sort of process all that we've just heard. I've asked a few people who are sort of veteran parents to kind of help, you know, facilitate the conversation, but really, Amy will put this in the chat, but some of the things that we can talk about in the small groups are is to introduce yourself, share something that's really exciting to you about launching your kid, share what you're nervous about, and if you are a veteran parent, you've launched a kid before, like please share your advice and what do you wish that you knew then that you know now. So we're going to go ahead and go into small groups for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to say our last goodbyes. Have fun. Meet some new folks and to talk through all this together, this really emotional but special time that we're all sharing. So again, I just want to remind you that we're going to have part 2 of this on June 6th at 8 p.m. And we'll be sending an email tomorrow with all of that information as well. So you can add it to your calendar. moving forward, our hope is really to continue to nurture you as a parent and give you opportunities to come together as a cohort through our partner organizations. I want to thank again our amazing panelists. I want to thank Annie Fortnow for making this program run seamlessly. And I want to thank our partners and their professionals, Samantha Brinsky, Rabbi Lydia Medwin, Yael Sherman, and Suzanne Hurwitz. I want to thank Lori Pelchovich for being an inspiration for this program as well. And thank you to our host committee. And just say goodnight to everybody. It was great seeing you, and see you next time.
And thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.